Hey, welcome to another installment of Fitted to Fish. We're here at St. Pete Fishing Outfitters. I'm Captain Joe of Head First Fishing, and this is Stani from Salty Fins. And you can watch us both on YouTube, but today we're here on the St. Pete Fishing Outfitters tube, and we're going to be discussing different features on the flats that we really like and we key in on, especially at certain times of the year. And these features are fish magnets. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about fishing the flats and closer to shore. What is it that you want to talk about today?
I want to talk about wading. I do a lot of wade fishing,
Right.
Since I don't have a boat. Not yet.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming.
I'm going to take you into some common features we have here in West Central Florida and definitely in Tampa Bay. And I'm going to show you pretty much a go-to spot with several different features that I can basically guarantee you'll catch some fish. I love to fish this stuff in the springtime. It's also very good in the fall. There's probably fish there year-round, but it's not, it's not like year-round it's going to be just a major fish producer. But I guarantee you, if you fish it during some of these major times, you can actually have some crazy good days in spots that are just like this. So come on in a little bit closer. I got my whiteboard here, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Alrighty, so what I have here sketched out on the whiteboard is basically what I would call a fish factory, an inshore game fish factory. You've got several different features here that I look for that will attract fish. So you got your boat here, and you've got an island here, and you've got an island there, you've got a little inlet cut there, lots of mangroves, we got seagrass, and you've got a transition zone out here away from the islands. You've got a hole, and then you've got seagrass, you got scattered seagrass, as well as an oyster bed out here. So all these features are things that game fish and other fish want to be around. But one of the things I really like about this type of geographic feature with the land and whatnot is I think the fish are drawn to these areas because it gives them several different types of structure and depth zones to relate to. And they take advantage of these different features during different times of the year and different times of the tides. But anyway, you can see my boat. I have my boat set up here, power poles down, and I'm set up here right after the tide has maxed out at high tide. And the tide is going to be starting to go out. And this is one of my favorite places to be in the springtime. The fish will stack up here like you wouldn't believe. And they stack up a lot of times right along the outside of these points right in here. So we're going to have current. It's going to be dumping out of this backwater back in here. Current's going out. And then you're going to get a lot of current buildup around these edges here. And sometimes, because of the current that sweeps off these islands, you'll get a little trough. Not always, but sometimes you'll get a little trough right along the edge of the island. So you got some grass out here, and there'll be just a little depth change. It could be, 6 inches. It could be a foot. Just a little trough inside there, and then you got 2 to 3 feet out here on the outside. Doesn't really take much, but they like that little bit of a drag out, a little bit of a trough. Right there by the mangroves, and the current sweeps along these edges here, and those fish are going to be right there along those mangrove edges and in the holes, and they're going to be waiting for whatever bait comes by, and they're going to devour it. And in the springtime especially, I've found that you can sit here in some of these places and catch 10, 15, 20 plus snook. There'll be redfish, there'll be jacks, there'll be nice trout all mixed in. But it's definitely a snook hotspot for sure. We have a lot of snook here in Tampa Bay, and a lot of them are going to be anywhere from 21, 22 all the way up to 26 inches. That's going to be a pretty common fish. You're also going to get a few slots mixed in, and every now and then you'll get a really large mature snook that's over slot. So the fish will take advantage of these different features. I found, you know, if the water comes up high, the fish are pushing up in here further and further, and then it starts to fall out. The fish are gonna slowly slide back. They'll make use of these different zones as the tide changes levels. So the fish will be pushed up here against the mangroves and back up here in this cut. They'll be around that oyster bar right there. And then some of them will stick around this point right here, and when the tide gets really low, they'll slide off into that hole, or they'll slide off into this grass, into this depth contour right here. So that will be a little bit of a drop off that stays consistent, where you got 2 to 3 feet up here off the island flat, and then a little bit further out into the main tile flat, it's going to be 3 to 4 to 5 feet. So they'll push back on there if the tide does get low enough. If the tide doesn't get low enough, they may stay up here. But this is where you need to be with your boat, or if you can wade to it. When that water starts pulling out around these corners right here, you're going to have all kinds of fish sitting right in here. They'll be out here. There'll be tons of fish all over here. And then there's one little key feature that is hidden to a lot of people. It's the little riffle effect. The ripple that runs off, and if the tide's pulling out that way, it may go off that way. There'll be a little riffle, and there'll be grass mixed in. Those fish will sit in that current riffle, and if you're fishing with live bait, you know, I'm gonna start up here, I'm gonna start throwing freebies, chummers, into the mangroves along the edges and stuff. And they're gonna be going crazy. The snook and the reds are gonna be popping them, and they're gonna make their way out with the current. And then you'll start to notice out here, you'll hear a pop and a splash right out here. There's fish using this area as a transition zone. They're sitting up here, and those baits that you threw out, they're getting killed out here. So throughout that tide, you know, I'm starting up here and then catch a few fish. If that dies down, then I'm going to slide back a little bit more and slide back a little bit more, and there'll be fish. So I can fish here for several hours in the bay if the bite's good, if there's a good school of fish there. And then eventually, as it gets lower, I might fish that hole, and then, you know, by the end of that tidal movement, I'm going to be out here fishing this edge right here. So look on Google Maps, look on whatever charting software you have, get out there, look visually, and find places like this. I can guarantee you, you will find fish in these spots.
All right, now Joe's covered the boat fishing part. I want to talk a little bit about wade fishing, because I do a lot of wade fishing myself. So the water's flowing out here on the outgoing tide. Yeah, the fish are gonna be stacked up here. So if you can get to this part right here, this spot along the shoreline right here, along the mangroves, you can cast up current and just let that bait drift down the current to where the strike zone is, and most likely you're gonna get thumped like right around here. That's where all the fish are sitting. So I'd be posting up right here, mainly throwing lures, just because it's easier. You know, it's not so much work where you don't have to chum. I mean, you could go out there with live bait, shrimp or your greenbacks, and grab a handful of bait and just toss it out there, chum it up a little bit, and cast that bait up current and let it drift. But I personally use a lot of lures, just because I can cover more grounds that way, and you can catch a lot of fish with lures. So the types of lure I'm going to be throwing is shrimp, just because it's lighter, and I'd cast it up here where the 2 feet of water is, and just let it drift all the way down to 4 to 5 feet of water. And I wouldn't work it too much, just let it drift all the way down so it can sink all the way down to near the bottom where the fish are sitting, and that's where I find the most success at.
Do you want the bait to look, or your lure to kind of look like, you know, a shrimp or some other type of bait fish, to look like something that's kind of casually being drawn out with the current? Yeah, it looks kind of natural that way. Right.
Matching the hatch. Swim bait works really good. I'm sure there's a lot of greenbacks out there on the flats. There's always greenbacks on the flats. even though the style of fishing is a little different from fishing off the boat, it's still as effective, and you can catch a lot of fish wade fishing.
Well, I'm confident if you follow these tips we've given here today that you will catch a lot of fish. Remember, find the fish factory. Find the areas that have a lot of attractive features in them in a small area. Get there at the right time with the right bait or lures.
Right tide.
Exactly.
Right tide.
And you'll be definitely catching a lot of fish. Thanks for coming by St. Pete Fishing Outfitters and watching Fitted to Fish.